Hello and welcome to another episode of the Opus Well Style podcast. My name is Iván Watanabe, here with my great partner, Evan Wohl. Evan, what's going on, man? How are you?
Doing great. You're looking pretty fresh with those new Opus polos.
I appreciate it, man. Just in from Rome, so we're very excited. On with us today, again visiting us, Rob Karp, founder and CEO of MilesAhead. What's going on, Rob? How are you?
Doing great. It's 88 degrees and sunny today.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, we're excited to have you back on. I think the last time we had a conversation was mid-COVID, so obviously things have changed in the travel space. So we're excited to learn a little bit more about that. And Henry Kamp, nice to meet you, leading the air sales and operations team for MilesAhead. So we're very excited to have you on, Henry.
Well, thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. So, basically, I think we just kick it off with, what are the major changes that you guys have experienced, in your business since the last time we spoke? Again, the world has evolved significantly since, we had this conversation, say two plus years ago. But specifically travel wise, what are the major changes that you're seeing out there today?
Yeah, I think we were talking about this before. It's been, I think, almost 2 years really since we were on the podcast last. And to think about what's happened the past 2 years, I think to start is the demand and people's desire to travel has not slowed down. We were wondering what was going to happen sort of end of last year, beginning of this year, having a banking crisis, talks of a recession, and we have not seen that yet have an impact on people's decisions, at least the market of clients that we're working with.
And when did you see it start ramping up, and it's just been a steady ramp ever since? Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, since March of 2021, which is really when people started getting vaccinated, they had this boost in confidence to just go, right? And what's been interesting to see is the last group of people to start traveling tends to be this elderly group. And they have started to go. And once these people go once and they get over that fear, I mean, it's just funny. There's one couple we're working with, they're in their late 80s and they travel once a month now. Yeah,
good for them.
It's kind of it's inspirational to say.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And are there any places these days where you feel like, are the hot spots where you're just constantly booking travel for this particular location? Is it regionally? Is it more about sort of how many people are vaccinated in that area? Because for the most part, there's not a ton of restrictions these days, right? So, what are you seeing the decision-making process for people as they travel?
Yeah, it's a great question. Because for the most part, restrictions are gone at this point. It's kind of been phases. So first it was, where can I go? Then it was, I want to go relax. I want to go to a beach. Maybe I'll go to a city like London or Paris that I've been before. I want to rediscover it. Now what we're seeing is that people want to adventure. And I think it's actually a good point for Henry to touch on is sort of what we've been seeing lately happening in Asia, because Asia's been sort of the last part of the world to fully reopen.
I mean, Asia is last year's Europe, I would say. It's just, you see the boom, you see the demand, the inflated prices as a result too. I mean, we're seeing 20+K airfares round trip to
really
Asia. It's just
interesting.
Insanity. I mean, it's good for us at the end of the day, but it's still it's hard to justify that cost, but people are willing to do it just because it's so in demand, and it was shut off for so long. It really is mirroring what we saw, France to Italy last summer.
Got it. And any particular parts of Asia, or just Asia as a whole?
Japan, definitely Japan. Everyone wants to go to Japan. Everyone and their mother wants to go to Japan right now. It's crazy. Tokyo's big. Just seeing the whole country is huge right now. But even so, slowly we're seeing people going to to Bali, to Hong Kong a little more slowly, and slowly that's coming back as well. But Japan, there's a surge right now.
Interesting. And in just metropolitan areas, places where people have been dying to go for forever and just put it on their bucket list, and now they're willing to spend whatever it takes to get there. Is that sort of what you're seeing?
Yeah, it's interesting because you take Japan, people like to go in March and April, particularly to see the cherry blossoms.
Yep.
Like that's sort of a famous thing to do. Irony is, you go to Central Park right now, you're going to get some very pretty cherry blossoms as well. Doesn't require a 13-hour journey. But people are, I think they're fixated on experiences that they wanted to have for a long time. And they're in this mode of let's just do it. And if they have the financial resources, it's kind of like, let's do this, let's do that, let's do this. Like, it's just a repeating cycle. We have also seen there were people who came out of COVID that were like, I really want to do this because the price of travel is so expensive right now. It was really impacted by inflation, plus the fact that people weren't traveling the way they were for a couple of years. They're like, all right, maybe we need to not go at it as hard this time and kind of slow the pace down. But overall, we're seeing demand remain strong, particularly internationally.
It's interesting as it relates to the Fed fighting inflation. I think they're going to continue to have a hard time because people, individual households are relatively financially strong and they got a desire to spend money and go do things.
Yeah, and I think a conversation that we have both on the air side of our business and the hotel side is, just because a price is being charged and people are paying doesn't mean the value is corresponding to it, right? So that $20,000 business class ticket to Australia might have been $7,000 before the pandemic. You might actually sit in the same seat, but because the airlines laid off a bunch of flight attendants, the service, you might be getting someone green on board. That experience might be different. Or you might go to a hotel where they're charging $2,000 per night for a room, but 2 years ago it was $1,200 a night. How much does the experience really change? So it's a conversation that we've started to have with people to do our best to manage their expectations.
And I think that's where you all are so valuable for something like that, right? Because a lot of people, they want to go someplace. Maybe it's not necessarily specific to a location. They just want to have either a relaxing time or they want to go someplace relatively close. So they have the ability to give you their general criteria. And you all can say, hey, listen, you go here, may cost you X, but the experience may not be as great. But have you considered Y, right? Have you considered this other location? And you're going to get a ton of value over here. And I think that's why, in general, your services is so valuable.
I think it sort of makes the job fun too. Like, we had someone who came in recently and said to Henry, like, I want to get from New York to London in the most comfortable way. Like, that's such an open-ended question. But then, for instance, like, you can talk about this, Henry, like how you take that open-ended question and then turn it into like a specific recommendation.
I mean, yeah, it's just, people have their preferences. You get to know who these people are as a person. I can tell you right now, British Airways first class, for example, it's first class, or American first class. Let's focus on that. American first class is technically 3-cabin first class, but I mean, it's pretty terrible compared to what other airlines are offering. And, if I have a client deciding between that or Virgin Atlantic's new business class, they could probably save some money with Virgin. And it's so much more fun. You have the bar on the plane. That's always a good time. And I mean, we'll guide people that way for sure. I mean, it's better value. It's more fun. And, people get thrown off by those labels first in business, but we'll read who you are and we'll send you in the right direction.
Yeah. And the problem is you don't find out until it's too late. Like, you buy the ticket having an expectation of what first class is going to be like. And then you jump on a plane, especially if it's a new airline that you haven't been on, or maybe they just have a new fleet of planes and you have no idea, right? So you get on this airline thinking it's first class and you upgrade the tickets and it's underwhelming, right? And as you said, if you didn't know the other airlines or the other options, specifically if it's cheaper, most people think more expensive, better experience, but that's not necessarily the case, right? So, I think that's where you guys come into play, like in a big way.
Here and there, I'll explain that to a client. I'll say it's cheaper, but still better. And they don't always listen. They're like, that says first class. I want that first class. And then we do get to have that "I told you so" moment afterwards. And I love all my clients, but those "I told you so's" they just kind of show what we're doing here. That's when we really show our worth.
Yeah. And I mean, even so far as to be like, hey, you sit in this your first class here, make sure you don't sit in these seats, right? Like those types of things, again, just you don't know if you're not in the business, right? You could say, okay, listen, business class, you want to make sure that you get these 2 seats because those 2 seats are behind X, Y, and Z. And you guys know that kind of stuff. And the rest of us, have no clue. And again, we find out when it's too late.
Yeah, I think
Go ahead.
Well, I would say the crazy thing about flights is, to many people, it's very accessible, right? You can go on an airline website, Google Flights, Expedia, anyone can book a flight. I think what we've started to embrace is there's so much more to just booking a flight, right? There's the thought behind it, what makes sense time-wise, product-wise, what happens when your schedule changes, what if you have a connection? And these components tend to stress people out. We get excited about them. So it's like, how do you flip it upside down? And I think that's what has allowed us to also make it an enjoyable sort of piece of business.
What are some hidden gem locations that you're talking to people about that maybe they didn't think about beforehand?
I just spent some time in Uruguay, down in South America. It's been written up a couple times as sort of the Hamptons of South America, but that's a nice place we've been sending people. If you go to Morocco, you can actually go to the Sahara Desert and rent your own tented camps for the night. It's kind of cool. So you could sleep in the sand.
Cool.
Sounds miserable to me, to be honest. I mean,
is there air conditioning in this tent?
That's not for me. That's not for me.
It's see, that's the thing. Not everything is for everyone. And we have every year, a couple times a year, we'll send people on these sort of epic safaris where they can go sleep in the stars and be a couple feet away from rhinos, and that's always a fun time.
Yeah, that sounds wild. Iván, you ever go on a safari?
No, I've never been. It's definitely on the list. There's a couple of other spots I got to hit up first, but yeah, it's definitely on the list for sure.
Well, especially if you're taking kids, you got to wait till they're a certain age, right?
Oh, right. Yeah. That's a whole nother added challenge. We've got a 15-month-old, and we're when we were looking at flights, flying to different places, and there's 0% chance I'm keeping her on my lap, 0.0% chance I'm flying internationally with her on my lap. That would never happen. Miserable experience for me, for her, and the guy sitting next to me, right? So,
any good tips, guys, for flying with kids?
Well, United has bassinets in business class, international business class, and that's big. We just had a big thing where you'd explore all the airlines. United's the number one EB airline we're seeing right now when it comes to long haul.
Interesting.
International business class. It's funny. You're just kind of throwing your baby in a box for the flight, but hey,
I'm sure it's nicer than that.
That's United's tagline, right? Throw your baby in a box.
I like United though. They've come a long way, but no, I would always just say bassinets are great. They're free, and you can.
So you're not buying a business class ticket for your kid?
I mean, you're just paying the taxes. So if you have a $3,000 business class ticket, you're probably paying about $300 of it for the kids.
Okay.
And you can do the same in economy too.
Interesting. Yeah, because we had been contemplating going to Japan. United, I know, has a direct flight. Typically, I've flown Japan Airlines, which I feel like had been a good experience in the past. I don't know how it is these days, but if you're going to Japan, where are you guys recommending folks fly? What airlines are you typically seeing people fly these days?
Well, we've been doing a lot of Japan Airlines just because we have some LA-based clients, and they're actually the only ones, shockingly, who fly a first-class cabin from LA to Haneda. I mean, Singapore also does Narita, to LA, but that's very far outside of the city.
Yep.
But right now, I think All Nippon Airways, I mean, that's one of the best airlines in the world. ANA, they call it, 5 stars from Skytrax. They just released a new first and business class product called the Suite and First and the Room in Business. And I mean, I've never personally been on it, but just reading reviews, looking at the photos, I mean, their business class looks like first class on half the other carriers. Again, I want to say no offense to British Airways, a little bit of offense to British Airways. I would much rather fly ANA business anywhere in the world and that new business class than British Airways first. And that's a great product.
Yeah. In terms of like hotels these days, are there any chains that you're finding like are really stepping up their game, have reinvented themselves across, from since COVID? Any places where you feel like there's a really good opportunity to find a deal?
What's interesting is a lot of our business has shifted to sort of independent hotels, purely because it can give you more of an authentic experience in the destination you go to. That being said, we had pre-pandemic and continue to have really positive experiences with Rosewood. We find that Rosewood does a nice job of having consistent service experience, and their whole philosophy is sense of place. So being able to mix like a luxurious experience while still feeling like you're actually in the destination that you're visiting. So we've been happy with them. It's hard to find deals these days. What I will say is the domestic markets that blew up first, the first places that people would travel, are now the ones that are sort of receding in demands. So you may find opportunities there.
Can you give me an example?
Like in Big Sky, for instance, there was a new hotel, the Montage, that opened, and I think initially they were pricing their rooms at a couple $1,000s a night over a really busy time of year. That came down 50%. Even places like Big Sky and Jackson Hole and Aspen and Vail, they will remain pricey, but they're not necessarily as pricey as they used to be, or other places to go the same time of year.
Got it. That's great. As we sort of wrap up, guys, are there any other things that you think the listening audience should really kind of take away from the conversation? Anything in particular that they should be looking out for?
This might be more of a Henry thing, but there are a couple small things you can do for a relatively minimal cost that can make your airport experience so much better. If you want to talk about that, Henry,
I'm a big fan. Definitely always get a TSA pre-check. Half of like credit cards these days, like Amex Platinum, Chase Sapphire Reserve, will actually cover that for you, and it really does make the difference whizzing through the airport. Don't take off your shoes, which is really helpful. Also, always if you can get an appointment, which is tough these days, get Global Entry, which actually comes with free TSA pre-check, so it's really worth it. And that gets you through customs quicker. Clear, we're really loving these days. I don't know if you know Clear. It's just a service that cuts you in front of the line. I hate waiting in line, so always use Clear. Also helps in certain stadiums, which we love, so that's a great deal. My advice, if you're flying, one, get good at using miles. Check out, there's some services now you can use for that too. But just because we are seeing those inflated fares here and there, you can find some good mileage deals. And two, always check the seat map. We were talking earlier about how, we know things about where you want to sit on a plane. I'm not going to say you'll understand the seat map quite like we do, but it's a good start. It's a good start, and that really can make or break a flight depending on your seat.
And for those that contact you guys, are you able to work with somebody's existing miles, or are you able to use that in terms of their overall planning, or is it simply outside of the miles purchase? Like how can they work with you?
We do use miles for some existing clients. Generally speaking, we are more in the just the cash ticket world, but on occasion, if it makes sense, it's not the focus of our services, but if it's something that you already have an existing trip with us and you just need some help and you want to use miles, that's possible. We would never do just a mileage booking, but we would help someone if they had a full-on trip elsewhere.
Awesome. And where can the listening audience, contact you when they're trying to book their travel plans? What's the best way to reach out to you guys to use MilesAhead to plan their trips?
Yeah, I think the best way for a new client to reach out is probably my email, which is rob@milesahead.co. So just .co. And I think on the last time around this podcast, our business was more focused on helping people use their miles. To Henry's point, it's less of a focus, but we've developed a relationship with another company called Point.me. And they specialize just in helping people use their miles. So we have a referral relationship with them.
Great. Well, guys, really, really appreciate the time today. Again, super valuable. And for the listening audience, make sure you use MilesAhead when you're planning your next trip. Don't make the mistake that I've made in the past. So feel free to reach out to them and let us know if you need anything else. But again, guys, appreciate you. Thank you for coming on. To you, the listening audience, thank you for joining us. Please click subscribe below so that you can be notified when our next podcast is released. Appreciate it, guys.